Welcome to episode 37 of the Biztape, your all things music business and media podcast. I'm your host, Colin McKay, with my co-host, Joseph Wazaleski.
Hello. We're back.
We're back.
We're better than ever.
Let's not go that far. But
well, we got a nifty, cool camera.
That is better, yes. We have a nifty, cool camera. Joe showing his skills to the world.
Yeah, you know what? We decided, we actually did record video before, but we decided to chill out for a while from that. And
figure out some stuff and then come back to it.
Yeah,
so,
you know, I had to go to the forest.
If you're audio listening, I guess I should say, if you're audio listening, then you're missing out seeing us. But if you want to see it, it should be on YouTube at the Biztape
podcast.
Biztape podcast.
You can see every pore in our bodies.
Right. And bodies. Woo. If you want to see where the other pores are, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at the Biztape, email the biztapepodcast@gmail.com with anything you want to talk about. It's always really fun. I've been super on Instagram. I'll get to it later. Very divisive. People have been messaging me about different opinions.
People are
it's always really fun, and I'm going to mention some of them on here, and we'll see how fun that is. So if you maybe want to get mentioned on the show a little bit, hit us up. We'd love to talk to you about all these issues that are definitely not contentious or conflicting in any way.
Yeah, no, it's really funny because today, it's funny with doing those Instagram polls because you can see who votes. Which I always think is kind of weird that you can just kind of know.
That is true. Voting. It's not.
And so like some of our friends will like vote in the thing, and it's always an entertaining thing to just kind of be like, "Hey, buddy, why did you vote for that?" It'd
be weird. Like imagine if like the U.S. government came up to you and was like, "Hey, why'd you vote like that?"
Yeah, I'm not. People are sweating like listening right now. I'm not going to out anybody.
No, you're good. It's just always good on that, and I love the engagement. So if you want to be maybe featured on the show, come on in. So we got to start right off with. I've seen a lot of people talking about Spotify and discovery mode, which we had talked about when it was first announced in fall of 2020, which I'll give you a refresher. But the reason why is because congressional members are wanting an answer from Spotify about it. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Rep. Jerry Nader, a Democrat from New York, and Subcommittee on Courts and Intellectual Property, and the Internet Chairman Rep. Hank Johnson Jr., a Democrat from Georgia, sent a letter to the streaming service exploring whether the feature could lead to lower pay for artists and fewer choices for consumers. Joe, you probably say this. Congressmen are very busy, so for them to actively be going after and asking questions is probably a little scary on Spotify's part.
It's probably a scary one for them
because they have like so many things. Everybody's yelling about them: coronavirus relief, civil rights, all this kind of stuff,
paying artists.
So when you get on the docket and the government, specifically Congress, is asking you about it, it means real deal. They're coming for some answers.
Yeah.
And here's some refresher for you about what they're curious about, which is discovery mode. So we talked about it again. It launched fall of 2020. And the idea of it, which was very controversial, is that for a lower royalty rate, artists can enable specific songs that they choose to come up more often on Spotify when Spotify is automating playlists. So they take a pay cut.
But they get more promotion. Gotcha.
So the idea is maybe you released a song recently and you want people to maybe by proxy to discover more about your music. Oh, okay, well, I'll put it on discover mode for this song. It'll appear in more playlists, and then I, hopefully will get more money in the long run because people become more like true paying fans.
Yeah, they're paying an exposure.
Right. Yeah, this is where you're getting into it. I've seen basically, supposedly, the playlists that are affected by this are specific like artist stations and radio. So we're talking about stations such as Summer Hits or Chill Pop, something that's more regulated, and songs that automatically play when you run out of something on your queue. So if you listen to a whole album, then there's a chance that these Discover songs could just come up at the end of it if you don't have more music in the queue. Now, it's kind of up in the air, which is going to be an important thing later, if this is going to affect really personalized mixes, because that's also what on the consumer side they're very afraid of, is stuff like the daily mix and the Discover Weekly. And Spotify has kind of been like ambiguous with if that is the case. I remember when we looked at the patent that it looked like it was just a factor they turned on, basically. So it wasn't like, oh, it's 70% more now. But Spotify is also being super, rightfully so, protective of their algorithm and how it works. So nobody can get a good answer about like how effective this is and how it's not. So I've seen critics of Spotify arguing, yes, this will affect personalized playlists. And I've seen Spotify kind of on the fence being like, no, not really. No,
Yeah, of course.
Right. So Spotify claims that basically discovery mode is just a small factor again, which is trying to go away from like you're paying for exposure, or some people have even go far as saying payola, because in their words, their system is very complicated.
Yeah, which if you don't know what payola is, it's an old radio term of that actually was found to be illegal to do.
They made it illegal through the federal commission. Basically, they found out that a lot of radio DJs, these labels and other artists would come up to them directly and pay them to play them on their radio station.
So like Led Zeppelin's manager was just like, hey, I don't know.
I don't know directly then, but like that's the
Donkey
idea.
4.0, will you play, I don't know, a Robert Plant song? And they're like, we'll give you, all of this money. Or sneakily, they'll be like, oh, we're gifting you something.
That's how we've talked about it before. That's kind of how radio skirted that. They'll be like, you might get more promotion like packages, and maybe somebody will come into the studio of your radio more often if you wink, wink, do something for me.
But it's pretty much cracked down completely.
Right. It is super regulated. They they will come after you. The government will come after you if you, especially in radio. But Spotify and streaming is kind of an open market. And we've talked about it before with playlisting, is that it can be really sketchy with people paying to get on playlists that are, for lack of a better term, tastemakers make, which are people who are just valued for making their playlists.
And sometimes they're just normal people.
Yeah, people will do payola that. So people are kind of concerned that Spotify and making this, in my opinion, a little bit of a jump, but also not too far off in saying this is kind of like payola, but now Spotify gets their cut of it as opposed to something else. A lot of people, including the congressmen, are very concerned also with this idea of racing to the bottom, because especially after the pandemic year destroyed a lot of live income and income in general for musicians, and the market, especially with more people getting on the internet side when they couldn't go do a show, they're afraid that this will make a lot of artists feel like they have to cut their royalty rate. That everyone just cuts their royalty rate. And then at the end of the day, if everyone's promoted, is anyone promoted?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So Spotify has until June 16th to reply to the congressman who basically sent a letter to Eck, who's the CEO of Spotify, being like, can you explain more of this? And so here's some questions that Congress kind of wants to know about discovery mode. And I thought we could like hypothetically talk about it. One, they want to know, is this a permanent thing? So if you turn on discovery, I think this is twofold. Is it always on discovery mode if you turn it on discovery mode? So let's say I release a song and I say week release discovery mode. Is it stuck there forever?
Yeah.
Like, or can I turn it off? Or also, is this program forever? Is discovery mode just for a little bit of while for Spotify, or is it going to last forever? I personally think on the second question that depending on the reaction that Spotify gets from this, especially since Spotify is the rightfully so scapegoat of like royalty payments and the low number of that for streaming. So it might be PR wise not a good idea to come out with discovery mode. So maybe it won't be permanent and maybe they won't do it, but who knows? So that's like the main thing. Joe, what do you think? I think it's kind of a weird route.
It's
Spotify.
a weird route. I have a feeling, depending on public opinion, I think they will shift their model. So like maybe they have both of those lined up of like you can turn it off and on, or it is if enough people don't care, they'll probably just keep it on the whole time. And that's a way of Spotify arguing, well, we're giving you more promotion, we're putting you on these playlists, we're putting you in the front page on people's screens, but at the end of the day, we're making money. That's what Spotify wants to do. They want to be profitable, especially now that they're public. They're a public business. So shareholders are probably hungry right now for some returns in their investment. And so Spotify is trying to find ways in order to get them their returns.
There was a spot. It was very weird with streaming. There was like a hype train of like, well, there was twofold. It was like there was a big crash of like a lot of those Spotify stocks and stuff because people were just like afraid because they thought, well, you don't go in the car anymore, so people stream less. Then the podcasting and other stuff turned up for Spotify, and then it skyrocketed up, and then recently it went down again. So I feel like you're right on that, as the investors are kind of like, what's going on here? Because it's been on a wild ride for the last year, as most of the economy has.
Yeah, and I think with that, necessarily, I think Spotify did have a bubble, like a big bubble of lack of competition. So they were in that space, and they took up a lot of the market share. When it comes to entertainment, because it was the only thing people could do, right?
They were definitely, and I've said it on the show before, they were considered kind of like the Netflix of music streaming.
Exactly.
So they had so much brand recognition that people would just ignore them compared to some competitors. Not to be like Amazon Music is far off, but like still it's Spotify. You know?
And now consumers, because everything's reopening again, people are traveling and setting travel records. There's more competition, and people are distracted more. People are going back to their jobs. People are going to go see shows and supporting music in other ways, not necessarily
this isn't
streaming.
Especially artist wise, isn't like right in your face all the time as it used to if I was, an artist sitting on the couch a year ago. So this might be like, well, I got other stuff to do and I want to promote my music. I'll just turn it on. You know what I mean? But here's the other question that kind of goes into it, and I'll mix these two together. One, kind of like what I was saying before, there's a concern that what if it's like a yes or no switch, then kind of that idea I was saying is everybody's promoted who's promoted. And then two, how is this rate calculated?
Yeah.
They haven't said yet. It's not like 30%. Or something. They haven't said like that. They said it's just a lower amount of money promotionally for the artist to take home.
Yeah, which could be, it's a lower amount. Well, how much lower are you cutting out of my paycheck?
And if it's, and here's the thing, it's like, when you pay promotion in a traditional way and you go to a company and they do it and they, this is, making up names. This is Dave. He's in charge of your radio promotion. He goes to all the radio people. This is Hannah. She's in charge of all your social media promotion. She makes sure that kind of like more concrete for people to understand, like, oh, that makes sense. Dave's got to live. Hannah's got to live. But if it's literally like a switch they just throw on, then that's a little bit harder of an argument to be like, we're dying here. I get why maybe they're dying because they had to do like R&D and stuff. But even then, that's going to be a harder thing PR wise for Spotify to communicate. Like, this is why this percentage is so high.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot to keep up with too, especially depending on how much it will be regulated, if at all.
And if it's going to be even.
Yeah.
If you're a major label and you want to do the promotional thing and you're already providing so much high paying out, reasons that you subscribe to Spotify artists, you don't think they're going to get a little bit better of a rating? You know what I mean? When it comes to a promotional rate, I think they are. I think rightfully so, but also it's a lot of PR stuff. And also that number of them getting a better rate compared to a regular indie artist, the difference in that is going to be the difference between how much people are going to be outraged and how not outraged they are.
Yeah.
If it's like 30 to 40% leaning towards the major label, they're going to be so mad. But if it's like major label's got like a 3 to 4% less rating, people would be like, yeah, that sucks. But yeah,
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then I guess my last two questions, how will this impact on streams being measured? So for instance, if you're on the chart or whatever,
is it going to be less value?
Yeah, is that we've talked about before, Billboard and Nielsen and stuff. They register like track equivalent albums and stream equivalent albums and stuff like that. But if you're promoted everywhere, and it's kind of like one of those situations that I remember BTS got into a lot of crap for, or other artists also got into crap for, where their song was embedded into an ad on YouTube and that would count as views for the video. So with that also, like if somebody's like, I just beat the streaming record, are people going to be like, no, you didn't? You know what I mean? Because it went everywhere. So is that going to devalue, and people are going to have to figure out a new way to kind of vet artists of how successful they're doing on streaming?
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about the devaluation of music throughout time. before. I feel like every single episode at this point.
It's definitely, I feel like we could make a nice depressing shirt with that. Music is devalued. And everyone's like, what?
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of in one way, the music industry is an industry that likes to complain a lot. It likes to do things the quote unquote the old way or the right way, but then something comes along and it upsets everything, such as
This mode itself.
I mean,
streaming back in the day.
Piracy.
Right.
We've had so many upsetters. I mean, now the coronavirus is another one, but there always manages to, like, acts and very prolific people in the industry always manage to find a way to make a profit in some way, shape, or fashion. And I think the difference between this industry and a lot of other industries is that you have to be creative in a creative industry to make money. You know what I mean?
Right.
You have to make money creatively in this creative industry.
Yeah, it's definitely not like a straightforward, you have a solid business plan and your product. Well, I mean, in essence, yes, but I'm talking about, like, a lot of this stuff is just thrown into the air. Like, your music is just thrown into the air and you're just like, I hope people like it. People generally like music, as opposed to, products that seem like they have more of a need that's easier to understand, if that makes sense. So, like, if you built a tool that hasn't been used before and people have been complaining about it, that makes sense. But when it's music, it's like, people like music, but there's no way to say, like, people are really, we need like 30 more metal albums. You know what I mean? Like, there's no like that. And so that's the weird part about it, and goes into promotion too, is it's a gamble. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, I'm a little scared, to be honest with you, with this idea, but I don't know how the public's going to react to it. I don't know how it's going to get delineated to the public. I feel like even if they made a responsible tool, Spotify has put themselves in a position in the eyes of the consumer and artists where they're the, no, you're not getting your money streaming company, even though all streaming companies do that. Yeah. So it's going to be a hard sell on that front for, anything that says Spotify is paying musicians less. People go, yeah, screw Spotify. So it's going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, but then they're like, screw Spotify, and then they get off TikTok, and then they go to Spotify.
Yeah, and then they listen on Spotify. So, like, I mean, it's going to be interesting in that front. I don't know how they're going to react to it, and I don't know if Congress is going to get involved. If they're going to go, like, this is a little strange, we're going to maybe put some regulation on it, that like a payola thing.
Yeah, I mean, knowing Congress, that might be all we get, is this is strange, and then nothing.
Yeah. I hope we do this responsibly. All right, you have a nice night now.
Yeah. Glad we had this hearing. Okay, let's go back to everything else. But Colin, I'm excited to say this, and I didn't think I'd be able to say it this early, but concerts are back. And they're booming right now. So yes, you heard that right. Full-scale concerts are back and getting bigger and bigger each day. As bigger festivals begin launching and more clubs are filling up, it's beginning to look as if concerts may be at a very healthy level by the end of the year. And in an article by Polestar, festivals that taken place such as Ooby Dooby, the electronic music fest in Ennis, Texas, gathered data from surveys to see if there's any spread rate in direct correlation to the concerts. So in a sample size of 2,000 people, there was only a 3.8 positivity rate, which showed that it was lower than the general population of Texas at the time it was received. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. The festival did require face coverings during the event, as well as partnering with FEMA to set up a vaccination site outside of the festival gates with both doses of Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson ready to go. No fee or ID required.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
Like I've heard of Ooby Dooby before, but I never I don't know. I'm not in like the electronic space.
It gives me the same positive vibe when like Ariana Grande or any of those people are like, we also have a place to register to vote here. And it's like, yeah, that's just a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is fantastic news, especially for big outdoor festivals such as Bonnaroo or Lollapalooza that are set to take place in August and September, as well as great news for many of our touring industry friends who have lost jobs or have been struggling throughout the last 2 years. So, the main thing, Colin, I'm wondering how is this going to, because they kind of set the bar pretty high with this festival.
Yeah, that's definitely, I would describe it as an oddity probably in the future.
Well, exactly. And I'm wondering if Bonnaroo or Lollapalooza need to take notes here and are like, oh, okay, we can do this.
I get, obviously we want to be positive. I would love for, especially when I was working live entertainment, and for the people I knew, I would love for this all to be, great information. But I definitely think that looking at this is a little strange. It's kind of like, it's a small sample size of 2,000. You're requiring face coverings, and then you're also, partnering with vaccination sites as well, which that's pretty much all positive, because like, it's not like you took the vaccine at the door and it's like, I'm immunized now. You know what I mean? But I feel like it's good news. And I have seen and heard from the vaccine stuff that it's a lot about being with little groups of people without masks or covering and stuff like that, and spreading it that way more than these giant, events where you see somebody maybe for like 30 seconds and then maybe the two people that stand next to you for an hour and a half. So I think it's great. The vaccination thing is really great. I hope that they can do that and continue to do that at major festivals. And I feel like on the vibe of it, like I feel like Bonnaroo would do it. Like if they, set it up, it's just going to take some effort. I don't think it's, I feel like if you went outside, no offense, if you went outside like a country festival and it's like, this is a hard, if there was one in Florida and we're like, this is where the vaccination site is, you might get some shit.
Well, yeah, but that's where the vaccination tents need to be.
That's where they need to be.
At the end of the day, because if you look at the statistics of how northern states and southern states compare in terms of vaccination status, it is drastically different.
Correct.
Where, Tennessee's not even close to hitting our goal. And I hate to say this as well, because I don't want to say like, concerts are back fully yet. You know what I mean?
But they're
getting there. The idea of them are getting there. And I mean, we've seen concerts here in Nashville that are starting back up. Bridgestone announced a bunch of tours that are coming through town now. And at this point, whether we agree with it or not, concerts are back in some capacity.
I agree. And I feel like the public sentiment has definitely taken a change when it comes to, I would go to a concert.
As someone who is very cautious over COVID, I feel safe, I think, going to a concert personally, because I am vaccinated and I will be wearing a mask. But if you are not vaccinated, I highly implore you to get vaccinated, because it is freeing in a lot of ways. It just makes you feel a lot safer.
Right.
Because you'll be a lot safer.
And so, I mean, that's the end of the day. It kind of, I way back, I was talking about the UK has done an extensive amount of studies, and so has Germany and the EU in general, with trying to get people to go to small event. And they were doing it like during the middle of the pandemic, because they were really trying to get their industry back. And so they were doing stuff like this, where it's like, oh, we send 3,000 people in this room and the air vac's really good, and people are, wearing face coverings, and the numbers were good there. So it's not just like, if you're looking at this, it's not just a one-off, there is proof to that if people do a festival and require their patrons to be responsible in terms of pandemic prevention, then it works. The problem is requiring and making people do it responsibly.
Yeah.
And it's sad, like you're saying, like that northern and southern states, and kind of like that story I did about Wyoming when we were talking to Zach Green a couple episodes ago, how these promoters will jump state lines to avoid these shows, or avoid basically shows that have any kind of regulations. And so it's kind of like a double-edged sword, where you want people to go, you want them to be comfortable going to concerts again, to reignite the industry, but at the same time, a lot of people are turned off by having vaccine stuff. It's just crazy. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
I was like dying in the middle of that.
I was like, it looked like you were getting emotional for a second. I was
crying. I'm just like, yeah. I mean, a little bit on the inside. It's like, it's one of those things where these regions that really need vaccines, that are scapegoats for these festivals, are happening without regulation.
Yeah.
And so it's like one of those things. I'm glad, especially Texas, for having this, being a southern, very autonomous state. So, I mean, that's a nice sign too. But we'll just have to see what the impact is on the disease. But I am glad that it seems like people are making an effort to try to educate people and to try to do it responsibly.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I also think the reason I'm saying specifically concerts are back too is because people are doing full capacity concerts.
Yeah, this ain't no 65% anymore.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I think we're safe, or we're going to try to be as safe as possible getting to full capacity.
I've seen people make the argument of, people who are going to get vaccinated are probably vaccinated right now. And I was like, I understand what you mean, but at the same time, that's not always the case. Some people don't have the opportunity. And so that's why I'm very glad that, at the end of the day, if you could get a vaccination outside of sight, you know what I mean, and get a dose, do you know how insane it would be if, like, you work to the bone, you're an American who's having to work 50 to 60 hours a week, and maybe you get to go to a show, and then you don't have time because you have to do your other life stuff in your mind. And you go to a show and you get the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine, and then you go to another show and you got the second dose.
You're going to feel better.
Or just Johnson & Johnson one shot. Like, how nuts that would be, and a great incentive for that. And at the end of the day, I wish there was a way that, like, you just took like a Johnson & Johnson and you were like, now you're good. Good luck. Go have fun. You're all good. But that's not the case. Yeah, I mean, what else is happening, Joe, with live entertainment? Because I know you got another story about it that's interesting.
Absolutely. So this is an interesting kind of, I think, experiment, or kind of, I guess, past experiment.
Experiential.
It's very experiential, yes. So there's a band called 660 that's from New Zealand, and they have become the biggest live act in the world this year, at least financially. So throughout the past 2 years, we've seen the complete collapse of the touring industry as venues and acts around the world could not travel or gather in spaces due to the biggest global pandemic of our lifetimes. However, while all other countries and businesses around the world were closed off, New Zealand successfully controlled the spread of the virus by imposing heavy travel restrictions and quarantine guidelines early in the beginning phases of the spread, and were open back to full capacity way before any other country. So because of this massive absence of global tours, domestic New Zealand acts have seen massive growth in popularity. And the country's current top touring act, as well as the biggest live act of the year globally, 660 has grossed $13.7 million with, drumroll, just 7 shows across the country, as well as being the first act to play to 50,000 people in Eden Park, which is the national stadium of New Zealand. So what's crazy about them playing or it's not Eden, I guess you could say Eden Park, is that it's a big rugby stadium. And in New Zealand, rugby is huge. It's like the biggest cultural thing there, right?
Okay.
And so they're very protective about their stadiums and what it's used for. It is used just for rugby, right? This act is the first concert
to be there?
It's the first one.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? And it's because the demand was so high to have like performances. And there's apparently a little bit of like some drama going on with it, of like people saying like, no, it should only be used for sports. This is
a sacred place.
Yeah, this is a sacred place. Right. Like it should just be there for that. But more and more people started getting onto the idea of like, okay, you know what? Like live music would be great, and let's utilize the space. And I think it's actually going to set a precedent in the country for more and more rugby stadiums to start getting a bit more commercialized in the music realm. So at this moment, the band is on track to tour outside the country as travel restrictions and COVID cases are reducing in various countries. And Billboard explains a bit of the numbers history about the band, stating, quote, in 2019, 660 became the first New Zealand act to sell out at a stadium, Western Springs, 50,000 tickets. In 2020, they sold out Western Springs again and added it to a national sell-out stadium tour, which sold over 135,000 tickets, the national record, smashing their old mark, 75,000 for tickets on a domestic tour. They went on to say, quote, for some perspective, Lorde has never played a show in New Zealand larger than Auckland's Spark Arena, which boasts a capacity of about 12,000 and has hosted performances from Post Malone, Harry Styles, and many other international acts. So this puts a lot of perspective into how much competition from outside of your country, your home country, can face when you say you're like an artist, you're coming up, you're in a market, you're in a country that's not known for music, right? Like New Zealand's known for like having producers and stuff, but they usually always come to America for the most part or work with American artists. So everything's shut down. You're okay. The music industry is still functioning here. This is the only place on earth where there's like a music industry, basically. Yeah. So a lot of these people are taking full advantage of that. And it's boasted so many people that it's shown how, oh, wait, we have music in our own country now. And that sparks its own scenes. It sparks its own production. It sparks competition for other countries too. Do you see kind of what I'm getting at here?
Yeah.
So it's, in a way, this actually might be a very healthy thing because, to be honest, globally, a lot of the music industry is dominated by a lot of Western artists and that Western style. And I will say, if you listen to 660s music, it is very like, LA production, like almost like country pop to an extent. It's more like pop, but it has like a country like songwriter element to it in a way. But it kind of shows like how there is some good out of this pandemic, I think, especially for some countries that may be able to utilize this information and go, wait, maybe if we start focusing on our own acts in town, in our country, we can actually start making it to where we can compete with other countries.
I think they have a leg up ahead because they've been able to deal with the pandemic so well. So you're having bands that are like 660 here who have been playing big shows and going around and having all these people go, in one part of the world, but also since we're so connected by the internet, have a lot of lookers on because there's no concert. So if you like looked at a concert footage from 2020, you would be like, whoa, what is this band? And you might actually be interested to see it. And they were getting more promotion from that as well. So it kind of reminds me of kind of a strategy that's used by some people where it's like, we're going to be the best at something due to the circumstances that we have. It kind of reminds me of like Ludwig on stream, like became the number one streamer by doing this whole gimmick of staying up all day and streaming all night for like 30 days in a row. And it's kind of the same way where it's like, we actually have the opportunity to do this. And so nobody else does. So let's do it. And they did it. And I wanted to pull up, they made $13.7 million across 7 shows in 2020, right? And they were the number one show. If you want a comparison of how much and how bad the music industry was hurt, in 2019, which I got specifically pre-pandemic, Pink was the number one global one at $215 million.
Yep.
And then the rest are like Elton John, 212. So like this is like over $1 billion in the top 10.
Yeah.
So that's how small the industry shrank.
Yeah.
As we went from $1 billion, we went from 215 million to 13.7 million as the top band. So
and this might power. It might be a blimp at the radar in the grand, like when things open up again. But it is kind of an important thing of like when this happens, how if you actually take care of the main problem, aka the global pandemic in your country, then you can do things again.
I don't mean to put it to like this extent, but it almost reminds me of how, if you guys have ever had a history class, they always talk about like how America in World War II wasn't blown up. So that was part of the reason that we became a superpower, because it wasn't war torn. And that's kind of what it feels like. But in music here, it's like you actually have an audience, you're able to do it. And so you are able to have this stat that will be able to be put on any one sheet for the rest of your life. and then that will be like enough for people to be like, we should try this out. If they were the number one grossing band, it's stupid, but it works.
Yeah. Colin, you want to know something funny here. How many views do you think their main music video, their most popular music video on YouTube has for a global act, for a global record-setting act in the touring industry?
See, I know you're trying to dupe me, so I'm going to say like 700,000.
You're close. It's 560,000.
Yeah, I knew it, and that's like insane for how low
because
that is.
compared to that to Pink.
I also wanted to add, I was like, Lorde is technically a New Zealand native, and she still was not playing as big as much, stadiums as these people were.
Yeah,
which is nuts. I think right now it's going to be very nice for New Zealand to have a market like this who's ready and been touring and can go, hey, we can go do this. These other guys in America or UK or somewhere, they've been shut down. So they got to get all their stuff up and running. So we've been good. We got all the techs. We got everything going. So just book us. It's going to be a great show. Unlike other people that got to do a warm up. So that can be powerful. And especially when you already have all the logistics figured out, because it's like, well, we know who would mix it. We know who it is. We just got to book the plane tickets and get the gear over there. And then that's it. So that's a leg up in terms of everything. Other than that, though, I don't know how crazy this will be like for New Zealand. Like, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'm being a little bit. I'm embellishing the amount of the cause.
I think it's definitely. I think it's definitely notable because
I think it's more notable if you are an international music business professional, because it shows even more like like how you can find a pocket.
Right.
In like a country, in like a sector. That
how you could just go there and make $13.7 million on 7 shows at a country that, necessarily is not known for being the music capital of the world.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, after kind of reading more about the band itself, I think they actually have a chance of breaking into the Western market.
And I think it's partially because of these stats and their ability to be like, we're ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they already sold a bunch of tickets for their Australian.
And I'm telling you, in the marketing wise, it's like, in COVID, if you had this footage of a concert going on, there's 50,000 people there, that's going to circulate on the internet because everybody else doesn't have it. You know what I mean?
I'm pretty sure that video of people going to concerts might have been them.
Right.
Because it was a stadium show.
Yeah, because I saw a bunch of stuff that was like, New Zealand's doing really well. Look at like New Zealand, how they're able to go places. And like, that's just cross promo. You know what I mean? Being the first in anything is like that. So I think this band is in fantastic shape to grow and expand out of a market that's usually traditionally, I would say, harder to grow and expand out of. So yeah, I think they're going to be in great shape. I think that New Zealand has a ways to go to become like a superpower, but definitely this is like an up, you know what I mean? And like you're saying, this is completely a market that people don't think about, why. And I've talked to music professionals sometimes is, some people want to be, rightfully so, the king of the world. I want to be number one. I want to do that. And I've talked to people and been like, why don't you just be the king of this hill? You don't have to be the king of the world. If you're the best of this place and you're doing well and you're making money, then just do that. You know what I mean? You don't have to be the top of everything. So, we'll see New Zealand. If we're all moving from like LA, Nashville, and New York to New Zealand, then you can eat my words.
Get a nice little cottage out there.
Right, exactly. Oh man, Twitch. I got to talk about Twitch because people were fuming on Instagram about Twitch because I brought it up again, and and it kind of goes into my argument here. So Twitch, we've talked about before, is dealing with a lot of copyright infringements as they claim to basically try to make a system to prevent and monitor these claims. So you may be like, we've talked about this before. It's still bad. And so that's why I want to bring it up, especially now. And I've got some opinions from our audience about it too. So we talked about this first big wave of what's known as a DMCA takedown that happened to Twitch, which was about in the fall of 2020. I wonder why. It's like a bunch of artists and labels were like, we're not making a lot of money in traditional ways, so let's find out where we can make some money. And it turns out Twitch had, and as many of you know, a lot of illegal uses of music either being streamed or recorded. So a DMCA is, just for a quick refresher, you may have heard this term, especially if you're familiar with YouTube. It's the Digital Copyright Act, basically, and the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It's a very infamous law in the tech space, and to make it really short, it protects companies like Twitch from being sued by copyright holders when their copyright is infringed on their platform by basically having this deal of, if you take it down, then we won't come after you. So it gives them like an invulnerability in that way. Now, Twitch, in my personal opinion, has basically been the forefront of, live streaming, and is owned by mega giant Amazon, who has a plethora of copyrights that they monitor and use and exploit well. So what I'm getting at is it's not like they don't have a support network to figure out what the hell is going on and how we're going to figure this out, but they're kind of not doing it. And from a long time ago, obviously when they, were Justin.tv, little company, I get it. It wasn't at the forefront of their mind, but they've had years to try to figure out these issues with copyrights that they've just kind of, looked the other way at, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because they were like, if we look at it and acknowledge that it's a thing, then these companies are going to say, we want our money. So that's why they were doing it.
Yeah. And Twitch does not like paying money.
Nobody likes paying money, but who the money goes to? The artists that are paying, who have their songs being used. And, people go to streams and they go, well, we like this music. We'll stay here too. And we like you. And it's a part of the performance. It's the same way I was explaining to someone who kind of didn't understand Twitch. If you were, at a live show or a sports arena and there's music playing and it's pumping, everybody pretty much agrees they should be paid for that. You know what I mean? If it's enhancing the experience and everything and it's part of the experience. Mm-hmm. So many big creators in July of last year of 2020 just started getting this is the bad part. They started getting their videos taken down, a lot of them. And they started getting even threatened by Twitch to get taken off the platform just all of a sudden because Twitch went, oh crap, all these people are coming after us and we have to take it down. And so all these streamers got blindsided because they were now in an environment that Twitch had created where, unlike YouTube, who's still learning, had been ignorant to copyright law, basically, and understanding that these artists get compensated and you're not supposed to just play music to hundreds of people all the time. So they were like, what's going on? Why am I going to lose my channel? I don't understand. I've been doing this for years. And Twitch's policy states that repeat copyright violations will result in an indefinite suspension of accounts. So people were really scared. If you built your whole streaming career up, and then Twitch comes up to you and says, you're going to get suspended infinitely for this thing that we just didn't pay attention to. So anyway.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And I remember when that happened too, because everyone was stressing because they were like, I have to go through every single video now.
Right. And I'll get into that too. Now, a year later, Twitch still has many issues involving copyright and basically has created a system that is still confusing to streamers. And I'll also say streamers have a community that hasn't really ignorantly, either willfully or just not knowing, have been doing this. And so copyright holders of labels and publishers have been coming after it. So there's kind of two issues here that I'm going to put out here. One, there's the live stream itself, which is a different right. And then to play music on a live stream. Mm-hmm. And then there's the recorded and on-demand video service, which is actually what most of these copyright infringements are going after. There's a system called VODs. They're like video of the days, and they go on people's channels. And it's just like if you clicked on a YouTube video, you could watch part of their stream or watch their whole stream sometimes. And a lot of times these channels just auto upload them on when you stop streaming. It'll just go boom, VOD is there and stuff like that. And so if you miss the stream and you want to watch your person, okay, here it is. We can watch it. But problem is that these streamers, other than the ones who are ignorantly, just playing music and blaring it on their stream, some of them will stream for multiple hours and there'll be one thing in there. Somebody will come at, somebody's phone goes off in the background and they have a ringtone and then they get a DMCA takedown for the whole thing. And they don't know where it is and this is what happened to all these streamers. They had to comb through hundreds of thousands of hours of video to find little things like that to try to edit them out. Right.
That sounds, as an editor, that sounds like a nightmare.
Or you were doing it and you were doing it, just playing your Spotify with copyrighted music, and the whole thing's gone. The whole video, you cannot put any of the video there.
Man.
And some of those, again, some of them were doing it willingly and knew this, you're not supposed to do this. And some of them just were ignorant about it. And I kind of blame Twitch for not perpetuating that, but also just the streaming community in general for being like, you just play it. To their credit, Twitch has added over the last year a couple tools to manage takedown requests and to delete videos and all this kind of stuff. This is the one we talked about this probably like 7 or 8 episodes ago. They made a service that was called Soundtrack by Twitch, which, if you may remember, was to have cleared music played on these streamers' streams. So, okay. And Twitch has basically struck deals with all these distributors and a handful of indie labels from around the world. So not like a lot of really, really, really big things. So here's the thing about that when we covered it. It wasn't clarified yet, but Soundtrack by Twitch only covers the license for the music when you're just streaming it.
Oh,
it's
man.
not the on-demand VODs.
Yeah.
So like if you're playing it in the stream and you're like, guys, let's listen to this song, you're cool. If it's through Soundtrack by Twitch or other services where you have copyright-free music, then you're cool. But unlike those other copyright-free music services, Twitch's license didn't go to when it got recorded later. So they would just immediately have to get rid of it, and people didn't understand it. It's confusing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Yeah. So
And for a lot of these creators, they don't work in the music space. So
No, it's
you
weird.
have to educate the community and make them understand why this is an important thing.
right. And there's whole different levels of it. Like we talked about on the show, there's the recorded piece of music itself, there's the song itself, and those are different rights. So it's very confusing if you've never navigated this stuff before. So I guess my last thing is Twitch added in their claim, and they sent a email over to a lot of creators.
The dreaded email.
Right. They always send these like dreaded emails that sound really dark. They said, we are committed to being more transparent with you about DMCAs. We recently received a batch of DMCA takedowns with about 1,000 individual claims from music publishers, and all of the claims are for VODs, so those recorded videos, and the vast majority target streamers listening to background music while playing video games or IRL streaming or in real life streaming. Based on the number of claims, we believe these right holders used automatic tools to scan and identify copyrighted music in creators' VODs and clip, which means they're likely to send more notices. We're actively speaking with music labels and solutions that could work for creators as well as rights holders. This is our first such contact from the music publishing industry. Okay, there will be several owners for a single piece of music, and we are disappointed that they decided to send takedowns when we are willing and ready to speak to them to talk about solutions. Come on, Twitch, you know this. The bucket is on your plate. They want as much leverage in these conversations as they possibly can. So they're going to give you 5 million DMCA takedowns. And so when you go to the table, they go, well, technically we could sue you right now if you don't take all of this off, or you could pay us 20% more in this deal and we'll make more money.
Yeah.
And so they've created a situation that is just terrible. And honestly, I'm not saying from like the Justin.tv days that they should have been like on the ball about this. But when they got acquired by Amazon,
it should have been immediate.
it should have been a pressing issue from day one. And I'm surprised. They should have gone from day one. They should have gone, everybody, we're reforming the system. We need you to know that it's illegal to just play like Spotify type music that isn't cleared. And you need to know this as a streaming community and do that. But, I know what they were thinking. They were like, we're going to lose all our content creators because they're going to go to YouTube Music or whatever because we're going to scare them. But now you're in this terrible situation where you're going to pay so much more money for everything.
Yeah, I mean, it gets harder before it gets better, especially in this transition, because we saw with YouTube before of everyone freaking out. And now it's like, it's the running joke, right? You post a video on YouTube, it's going to get claimed.
It's going to get claimed.
Like, no matter what, it's going to get claimed. And people on YouTube have accepted that. They've seen how that's a thing, but they managed to work around it by working with sponsors and people that are comfortable giving them money and supporting them financially. And I think that would work with Twitch too. I don't see how that wouldn't work with Twitch. It's a live video medium. It's kind of like TV in a lot of ways. The problem is, you're right. Amazon did not, I guess Amazon or Twitch, but they did not. They just decided to sweep it under the rug.
When they got bought out by a company that already knows about content licensing, has millions of lawyers, knows all about the idea of intellectual property rights, it should have been a major concern of the company. And the problem with this whole thing is that they've thrown it on to the problem of the streamers.
Yeah.
They said, this is your problem. You figure it out unless you want your channel gone.
And I have a feeling, there might be another streaming platform that a lot of those streamers are just going to end up going to anyways because of how bad Twitch
if you get kicked off of Twitch, you're never going back.
Yeah, you go to YouTube.
Right, you go to YouTube, you go to Facebook, you go to any of those other alternatives, you're never going back. So you're just, killing these creators who, and I'll get to this too, is the idea of the streaming community and people in general and their willful and not willful ignorance on this. There are people who are old enough to remember when Napster was suing or getting sued and music companies and the RIAA, History of Publishing, and everything, everybody was getting sued. So it's crazy to me. I did a poll, and if you want the thing of it, I did a poll. I said, do you think streamers, video games, IRL, etc., should have their streams taken down for using unauthorized copyrighted music, aka the artist isn't directly paid? And at the start of the recording, it was 43% yes to 57% no, and now it's 50-50. This is a divided issue.
Yeah.
So even regular people, streamers, communities cannot come to this consensus that, this is technically illegal. You can't do it, and I get it. At the end of the day, who the hell cares if you play a couple songs on your stream? But it's...
The artist cares.
Right.
If they're not getting paid. But I do see... the problem with coming at this issue with old school, an old school rule book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think people, you saw it, you were telling me off mic a little bit. People already are finding different ways to combat the system and combat the bots.
There's a couple Twitch people who have figured out this is how you get it, and so it doesn't show up on your VODs. Mm-hmm. So they're figuring it out, and it's kind of one of those things where we're in this gray balance, and Twitch is not afraid to throw this problem on to y'all. So if you're a streamer, your streamers and stuff like that,
you got to look out for yourself.
You got to look out for yourself. They're not going to protect you at all. You may have the anonymity that there's thousands of streamers out there, but these bots will find you. You know what I mean? Eventually.
Takes them 2 seconds to come through that website.
Right. They just throw that thing at it. Like they said, they think it'll have hundreds of thousands of more claims. So, Twitch, you have a fun time with that. I wish you would treat people better in that way, but here we are.
Here we are.
I sound like the old school, don't stream music illegally, kid. I've never done it.
My favorite is the high school play that was the mic was terrible and everything, where it's don't stream music, kids, because the cops will come. And then it's the cop comes and busts through the door made of cardboard.
Police. Yeah. And I guess before we go to the music, at the end of the day, the person that this hurts most is everyone and artists who aren't getting paid.
Absolutely. Well, Colin, what have you been listening to?
Oh man, Joe, you caught me. Okay, first, I know you were with me. We both watch, it's musical comedy, but it's still very good music as we watch Bo Burnham's special.
It's so good.
So good. And the music was great. Completely recommend it. I've been listening to the songs on YouTube. He did an official one of the Welcome to the Internet song, which is pretty synonymous with just describing the internet to people.
Yeah.
So I'd go check that out. I've bumped that a couple times, and the views on that are been skyrocketing on YouTube. It's still on the top of music trending. It's it was 7 the last time I looked at it.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear from Bo Burnham. If you don't know who he is, he's a musical comedian. He's one of the funniest people that have come out of just the YouTube internet age. And he continues to just be a monster whenever he comes out, because I feel like people forget that Bo Burnham exists. And then everyone, when he puts something out, it's been a couple years as he addresses in the special. They're like, oh yeah, that's the best guy ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, he's so secretive, honestly. As someone who has such a massive internet presence and weight, he doesn't put much content out there for you. You have to really dig for him.
He reminds me of a very much older kind of comedian in that way where it's like, I have created this product for you and spent so much time to create it. And so you can see that in his music. It's so fine-tuned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been listening to Samia's newest single, Show Up, which is amazing. And then I went back to Gus Dapperton's Orca. I just think it's such a good put together record. And I just love the songwriting because I think he really found himself as an artist with that record for sure. And then I love this song called Straight Outta Mumbai by J. Paul. And I just love it. I love it so much. It just brings me joy. Much. Yeah. But yeah, that's
should we like do something fun for the camera at the end?
Well,
only for the video listeners. The audio.
I guess we'll just wave
and just don't say anything.
Audio listeners, we're waving right now. So
goodbye.